Have you ever held something in your hand and felt it did not belong to this world? Not a myth, not a metaphor, but a piece of the sky, fallen, real, and shaped by human hands long before the first forge ever burned. Across deserts and forests, beneath tombs and ancient settlements, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts that should not exist. Iron tools and ornaments crafted centuries before iron smelting. Blades sharper than bronze. Beads harder than gold. Metal that came not from the earth, but from the stars. How did ancient civilizations recognize these fragments of meteorites? How did they shape them without fire? And why were they buried with kings, worn by shamans, or placed among treasures meant to last forever? In this expedition, we will trace 11 sky-forged relics, from the silent sands of Egypt to the icy edges of Greenland. Each one tells a story that history has tried to forget, a story of awe, of ingenuity, of a forgotten intimacy between Earth and cosmos. You are not just here to listen, you are here to remember. To step into the footprints of those who saw the sky fall and dared to pick up the pieces. The sand was soft the morning I found them. Not gold, not stone, but something in between. Small beads, blackened, beaten smooth, hidden for over 5 millennia beneath the desert crust of Gerzeh. The grave was simple. A child buried around 3,300 years before the Common Era. No royal markings, no grand architecture, just quiet earth and offerings left in sorrow. But among them lay a secret, a riddle hammered into shape before the world knew the meaning of iron. At first glance, the beads seemed unremarkable. Dark and metallic, their shapes were crude and slightly twisted. But when sunlight hit their edges, something shimmered, something not quite earthly. Under magnification, their surface revealed a pattern like no forged metal, not smelted, not melted, but worked through cold hammering, beaten again and again until they took form. Chemical analysis would later confirm what the ancient smith may have never truly known. The beads were crafted from a meteorite. This was not iron from the ground. It was not dug from ore nor pulled from the fire of a furnace. This was iron from the sky, high in nickel, traces of cobalt, its internal structure frozen into patterns called Widmanstatten, crystalline lattices that only form in the slow, billion-year cooling of a cosmic body adrift between stars. Somewhere in the ancient past, a meteor burned through the heavens and came crashing into the Nile Valley. It shattered, it scorched, and then someone found it. Perhaps they thought it was a gift from the gods. Perhaps they simply noticed how it gleamed in the light, or how it rang when struck. But what matters is that they tried, with no knowledge of smelting, with no bellows, with no blacksmith's fire. They took this alien metal and made something of it. They hammered it into thin sheets. They rolled it. They pierced it to create beads, not tools, not weapons, but ornaments, jewelry for the dead. That choice speaks volumes. Iron, in that era, was rarer than gold. In many cultures, it was reserved for the divine. In ancient Egypt, iron was known as Bayat Necher, literally the metal of heaven. And in the case of the Gerzeh beads, that title was not metaphor, it was literal. The metal had fallen from the sky. To hold them is to hold a message from a forgotten age. The beads are not simply remnants of the past. They are a convergence of sky and soil, of myth and metallurgy. They mark one of the earliest known human interactions with a material that did not originate on this planet. And what was it used for? Not conquest, not survival. but memory, mourning. A necklace placed around a young neck, perhaps to guide the soul, perhaps to honor it, perhaps to give it strength for the journey beyond. Today, the beads rest in a museum, behind glass, labeled and cataloged. But I still remember the weight of them. Slight, almost nothing. Yet when I held them in my palm, I felt the ages stretch backward, past pharaohs, past kingdoms, past the birth of cities, back to a time when a child was buried with fragments of a fallen star. I wonder if they looked up when it fell. I wonder if they knew what they held. Or if, like us, they were simply drawn to the mystery, drawn to what shines in the dark. This was the beginning, the first chapter in a hidden lineage of sky-forged relics, not melted, not molded, but shaped with reverence. The Gerzeh beads are more than ancient jewelry. They are a whisper from the cosmos, a message in iron, 5,000 years in the making. It was resting just above his thigh, wrapped in linen, still sharp after more than 3,000 years. A dagger, its hilt of gold and crystal, its sheath adorned with lilies, feathers, and a jackal's head. But the blade was something else entirely. When Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings, he found wonders no living soul had seen in centuries. Chariots, statues, vessels, and masks. A lifetime of treasures sealed behind stone. But few objects drew as much whispered awe as that dagger. At first, no one could explain it. Egypt, in the time of Tutankhamun, had barely begun to work iron. Bronze was still the metal of choice for tools and weapons. Smelting iron was rare, in many cases unknown. Yet here was a blade of iron so fine it rivaled the best works of later centuries. For decades, scholars debated its origin. Some claimed it was imported. Others said it was ceremonial, never meant to be used. But in 2016, a team of scientists put the question to rest. Through X-ray fluorescence analysis, they revealed the truth, written in the blade's very atoms. The iron was meteoritic. Its composition held unusually high levels of nickel and cobalt, the telltale markers of a meteorite. Radios that did not match any known Earth-based iron, but matched perfectly those found in iron meteorites. Tutankhamun's dagger was forged from a fallen star. The implications were staggering, not just for metallurgy, but for symbolism. In ancient Egypt, iron was sacred. It was believed to be the metal of heaven. And here it was, buried with a boy king, placed at his side like a divine protector for the afterlife. Imagine the hands that shaped it. A blade made not through melting, but by careful hammering, coaxing the metal rather than commanding it, folding and sharpening a cosmic fragment into something both beautiful and deadly. Tutankhamun was only a teenager when he died. His reign was short, his legacy for centuries obscured. But this dagger endured. It speaks of connections far beyond the Nile. Perhaps it came from Anatolia, perhaps from the Levant, but its true origin lay far above the earth, in the cold void where meteors drift for millions of years before falling into our world. To the ancients, this was not science, it was sacred. The sky had given them iron, and they had turned it into a weapon fit for a pharaoh. There is something humbling in that. The dagger was not the only meteoritic artifact found in Tutankhamun's tomb, but it is the most exquisite, a fusion of celestial origin and human craftsmanship. It blurs the line between heaven and earth, between mythology and material. To hold it, even in the mind, is to stand at the crossroads of deep time. A blade that began its journey in the heart of a dying star, drifted through the dark, and finally came to rest in the hands of a young king, destined to sleep forever beneath the sand. Today, it lies in a museum display, under quiet glass, but it has not lost its power. The iron still whispers, still gleams, still carries the weight of sky and story. Tutankhamun's dagger is not just a relic, it is a reminder that in every age, some looked up at the stars and did not only dream, they reached out. And when the stars came crashing down, they turned their fallen fire into something worthy of eternity. It was late autumn in the year 1963 when a Spanish archaeologist brushed away the soil and saw the first gleam of gold. Not just one object, not a single coin, but an entire treasure scattered across the earth as if poured from the hand of a forgotten king. They called it the Treasure of Villena. 35 objects in total. Cups, bowls, and decorative plates, thick bracelets, and delicate earrings. The hoard shimmered with almost 10 kilograms of pure gold. It was the largest prehistoric gold find ever uncovered in the Iberian Peninsula. But buried among the brilliance, there was something darker. 2 objects made not of gold, but of iron. At first, they seemed almost out of place, dull, corroded, overshadowed by the radiance around them. Yet their presence was no mistake. Recent analysis has changed the way we understand them. These 2 humble items, one a decorative piece, the other a bracelet, have been confirmed to contain iron not of this earth. Their chemical makeup reveals high levels of nickel and other elements common in meteorites. They were forged, not from ore, but from a meteor that fell from the sky. The Villena Hoard, dating from around 1300 to 1000 years before the Common Era, belongs to the late Bronze Age. This was a time before ironworking had fully reached the region. Smelting iron was rare, and the technology to do so was still emerging. Yet here we find not only gold, which required advanced metallurgy, but also iron, shaped without heat, without fire, with knowledge passed down in whispers. Imagine the craftsman, working metal that could not be melted, hammering, shaping, filing, drawing patterns into something that once blazed through the atmosphere in a storm of light and flame. This was not just adornment, it was reverence. Iron was seen as divine, a gift from the gods, and in the case of the Villena Hoard, it was placed alongside gold, the metal of the sun. Perhaps the iron was the night sky made solid, the tears of the cosmos cradled in the same burial as the most precious treasures of the earth. Why was this hoard buried? Was it a ritual offering, a safeguard in time of war, or the grave goods of someone who was never found? We may never know, but what remains tells a clear story. Whoever placed those objects beneath the ground knew their value. Not just the weight of the metal, but the power it held. Earth and sky, buried together. The location itself is telling. Villena lies in eastern Spain, where ancient trade routes crossed through mountain passes and along river valleys. Goods moved, ideas moved, and clearly materials from the heavens moved too. Someone, somewhere, knew how to recognize meteoritic iron, knew it could be worked, knew it deserved to sit beside gold. Today, the Villena Hoard rests in a museum, its pieces arranged in perfect symmetry. But I remember standing before the glass, eyes drawn not to the largest cup, not to the brightest plate, but to that single iron bracelet. It seemed to pulse with a gravity of its own, as if the sky had fallen and someone caught it, shaped it, and left it behind for us to wonder. This was not accidental. This was intentional. A decision made by Bronze Age hands that echoes across time. To place fragments of a meteorite in a treasure hoard was to claim the heavens, to say that we are not only shaped by the stars, but we shape them in return. In Vienna, we find proof, not just of trade, not just of wealth, but of awe, of humans looking up, and when the sky fell, having the courage and the skill to forge it into memory. The lake was still that morning, a mirror of cloud and forest, silent except for the whisper of water against ancient timbers. Beneath that calm surface, buried in the mud of a long-forgotten settlement, the Arrowhead waited, rusted, sharp, alone. It came from Mörigen, a site near Lake Biel in modern Switzerland. What remains there today are the echoes of stilt houses, once part of a thriving Iron Age village. People fished here, hunted, traded, and in the quiet hours of the morning, they may have stood by the lake's edge, arrow in hand, watching the mist rise like ghosts from the water. The Arrowhead was found in the remnants of that settlement, dated to around 800 years before the Common Era. At first glance, it was like any other triangular, barbed, made for piercing flesh or hide. But under closer examination, it revealed a deeper mystery. Its composition held a secret, one invisible to the eye but undeniable to science. High levels of nickel, traces of cobalt and germanium, a chemical fingerprint that matched not the Earth, but a meteorite. The iron came from space. More specifically, it is believed to have come from the Twanberg meteorite, a known fall in the region. The metal had fallen as fire from the heavens, fragmented on impact, and was then found by someone who saw not only rock, but potential. This arrowhead was not smelted. It was shaped, worked cold, forged by persistence rather than flame. Imagine the tools used: stone hammers, bone polishers, wooden anvils, all brought to bear on a piece of alien metal. Every strike of the hammer, a conversation with the stars. Whoever crafted it did so with intention. The blade was not crude. It was balanced, barbed, designed for function. And yet, it must have meant more than just a tool for hunting. Meteoric iron in this period was rare, incredibly rare. So rare, in fact, that it likely carried spiritual weight. It may have been seen as a blessing, a charm, or even a weapon of the gods. Was it made for war? For ceremony? Or was it simply the best material they could find, a way to bring the unreachable heavens down to the tips of their arrows? We will never know who held it last, whether they loosed it into the air or simply wore it with pride. But what remains is no less extraordinary. This small, rusted point connects the sky to the earth in a way few artifacts ever do. It tells us that long before iron was common, long before furnaces roared with heat, people found a way to work with materials not of this world. They did not understand space, or meteors, or planetary cores, but they knew quality, they knew mystery, and they honored it the only way they could, by turning it into something sharp. I think about that arrowhead often. The silence of the lake, the quiet hands that shaped it, the eyes that once saw it fly. Today, it sits in a museum case, lit by soft light, watched by curious eyes. But its story is older than the Alps, older than language. It began in the heart of a cosmic body, cooling over billions of years. It ended in the hands of a hunter or a warrior, deep in the forests of prehistoric Europe. This is not just an arrow. It is a message in metal, a whisper from the sky, carried on wind and time. And someone once was brave enough to aim it. The fields were quiet, overgrown, dotted with stones older than memory. Beneath them, in graves long sealed by soil and time, they found the bracelets, dark with age, coiled like sleeping serpents. Cold to the touch, yet thrumming with an energy too ancient for words. The Częstochowa region of southern Poland is rich in archaeological mystery. Rolling plains, thick forests, and burial sites that stretch back into the Iron Age. And it was from one such cemetery, dating to around 700 years before the Common Era, that these bracelets emerged. At first, they seemed like fine examples of early European metalwork. Twisted bands, circular forms, a pin here, an amulet there. Not made for battle, but for ceremony or status. But it was not their shape that captured attention. It was what they were made from. Tests revealed a secret buried deeper than the graves themselves. The bracelets and pin were forged from a rare kind of iron, a taxite, high in nickel, untouched by smelter or flame. This was meteoritic iron, unmistakable, confirmed not only by its composition, but by the very way the metal behaved under scrutiny. It had fallen from the sky. Think of what that means. A meteorite, traveling across untold distances of space, burning through the atmosphere in a final blinding scream, only to land on soil that would one day become Poland. It splintered, it cooled, and at some point, someone found it, recognized it, valued it, and shaped it into adornments meant to last. These were not tools of survival. They were objects of beauty, meant to be worn, meant to be seen, perhaps in life, perhaps in death. Either way, they were meant to speak, and they spoke of power. To wear iron in that era, true iron, was to wear the sky. It was a statement, a mystery turned visible. Only a few would have had access to such material. Chiefs, shamans, those who stood between the earth and something greater. The craftsmanship tells us much. The metal was hammered, not melted, worked cold and slowly, folded and wound until it submitted to human hands. No furnace could have helped them. No crucible could have softened it. This was skill earned through patience and reverence, and perhaps fear. Imagine seeing a fireball streak across the night sky, hearing it crash beyond the trees, finding the smoldering remnants days later, strange and heavy, with no explanation. Would you not believe it divine? Would you not guard it, shape it, pass it down? The people of early Iron Age Poland may not have known the science, but they knew enough to treat this iron differently. They knew it did not belong to this world, and that made it precious. Today, those bracelets lie in glass cases, their form still intact, their iron still sharp under light. They no longer adorn wrists. They no longer chime softly against bone, but they carry their story forward. Each twist in the metal is a decision, each curve a fragment of a forgotten language. They speak not of wealth, but of wonder, of a time when the sky fell, and someone had the courage to gather its broken pieces and make something beautiful. The Częstochowa bracelets are not simply jewelry. They are proof that the ancient world did not wait for science to tell them what was special. They felt it. They listened. And when the stars came calling, they answered with art. In these ornaments, forged not from the earth but from the heavens, we find a glimpse of a belief deeper than myth, the idea that some materials are more than useful, they are sacred, and the only fitting tribute is to wear them close to the body like a secret or a prayer. The tomb was sealed with silence, hidden beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings. When the stone door cracked open in the winter of 1922, the world leaned in and held its breath. Gold was everywhere. Statues, thrones, chariots, a mask of such haunting beauty that it seemed carved not by hands, but by myth itself. But among the gilded splendor, tucked into corners and wrapped in linen, were things far more unusual. 19 objects, Not gold, not silver, but iron. This was strange. At the time of Tutankhamun's death, around 1330 years before the Common Era, Egypt had not yet mastered iron. Bronze still ruled the workshop. Iron was rare, and when it did appear, it was often reserved for ritual, for ceremony, for those who walked close to the divine. So why did this young pharaoh go to the afterlife with so much of it? Most eyes naturally focused on the famous dagger, the blade at his thigh with the meteoritic core. But it was not alone. Alongside it were iron amulets, blades, rings, and tools, each wrapped with care, each placed with intention. And more than one shared the same secret. Tests on several of these objects revealed the same pattern as the dagger: high levels of nickel, unique ratios of cobalt, no signs of smelting. These were not products of ancient fire. They were born in stars, meteoritic iron. They had fallen from the sky. To bury a pharaoh with iron was to cloak him in power. To bury him with iron from the heavens, that was something else entirely. It was protection. It was honor. It was a passage. The ancient Egyptians believed in the journey beyond. Death was not an end. It was a voyage through peril and darkness, through tests and trials. And for that, one needed tools, weapons, symbols. These were not just objects. They were companions for the soul. Some of the iron pieces were tiny blades, perhaps used for ritual. Others were amulets shaped like sacred symbols: the ankh, the scarab, the jade pillar. Still others remained mysterious, their purpose lost, but their placement precise. What unites them all is their origin, not from the earth, but from the stars. It is possible that the priests who prepared the tomb understood this. Iron was already called Biat Netcher, the metal of the gods. And in Tutankhamun's burial chamber, it is clear they used it not sparingly, but reverently. Not as decoration, but as key, a key to the afterlife. Imagine standing there, thousands of years ago, the air thick with incense, the chanting low and rhythmic, the boy king's body laid to rest. And then, one by one, these iron objects placed at his side, not just for protection, but for transformation. Each object a fragment of the cosmos, each one forged by time, cooled across galaxies, and finally shaped by human hands, each one whispering of a world beyond. Today, these objects rest in glass, watched by millions, their edges dulled, their meaning partially obscured by centuries of forgetting. But the metal remains unchanged, still heavy, still eternal. Tutankhamun's tomb was not just filled with treasure, it was filled with stories, not of conquest, but of connection between the heavens and the earth, between kings and stars. These 19 relics remind us that the ancients looked up and saw not only wonder, but possibility. And when a star fell, they did not turn away. They gathered its pieces, they shaped them, and they sent them with their dead as gifts, as weapons, as prayers cast in iron. This was not superstition. This was legacy. The sky, bound in linen, waiting to rise again. The corridor was dim, the torchlight dancing across carved stone and silent coffins. We stepped into the chamber of the elite at el-Mata in northern Syria, and there, amid gold foil and lapis lazuli, lay a small pendant, unassuming and dark, yet charged with story. The burial dates to around 2,300 years before the Common Era. In a society rising into urbanity, here were women and children, adorned in silver and gold, their bodies laid to rest in a towering layered tomb, and among these treasures, one piece of iron drew the eye. It is tempting to call it a charm, a token of status, but this iron is not ordinary. chemical analysis reveals a signature that cannot be forged, the nickel-rich fingerprint of meteoritic iron. The metal came not from a mine, but from the heavens. Picture the moment. A bright fireball in the night sky. A crash. A fragment of iron buried in Earth's crust. Someone finds it. They recognize its weight, its uncanny coolness compared to river-smooth stones. They feel its difference, and they decide it will be worn. The pendant is simple in design, yet profound in implication. It was wrought in an era when iron smelting had not yet become widespread. To shape meteoritic iron, you hammer, you fold, you coax it into form, not with a roaring furnace, but through patient craft. The metal spoke of the sky, and the wearer wore it close to the body. In Syria's Bronze Age world, jewelry told stories of trade, power, and belief. Gold and silver moved across deserts and seas. But this pendant tells a deeper story. The sky's visitation, the human hand reaching upward, the jewelry of fire forged in silence. Was it worn in life, woven into a necklace, or placed with the dead, a symbol of cosmic passage? At el-Mara, the tombs were rich with ceremony, elite burials, animals honored, rituals preserved. This iron piece was part of that grandeur. It lay amidst beads and pins, lapis and shell. And yet it carried a uniqueness, the metal of stars. The fact that this iron precedes large-scale ironworking is significant. It shows that ancient peoples did not wait for the revolution of smelting. They engaged with metal through what lay in their hands, a rock from the sky, a mystery, a piece of the universe made tangible. Imagine the artisan, the pendant maker. They might have told themselves they were shaping fragment of sky into jewelry, or perhaps they knew nothing of its origin, only that it glinted oddly, rang when tapped, and held a power beyond its size. They shaped it anyway. They made something that would outlast a lifetime, outlast centuries. Today, the pendant rests behind glass, its story told in limestone walls and chemical charts. But the metal remembers. The nickels and cobalt inside it still hold the record of cosmic time, the journey from star to tomb. And for us, it is a doorway. To think, we are not just reading objects, we are tracing a chain of meaning. A meteor falls, someone picks it up. They decide to hold it, to wear it, to bury it with someone they loved. And through it, they connect sky and earth. The pendant from el-Mara is not just ancient jewelry. It is proof of continuity, across lands, across epochs, that the extraordinary was found, that it was shaped, that it was worn. As you sit back from the glass case in your mind, think of that metal falling through the sky. Think of someone in Syria 4,000 years ago unfolding its power, and know that you are linked, because history does not whisper, it waits. It was never a single discovery. No one artifact, no single tomb. It was a pattern, a quiet rhythm that emerged only when we began to look not at the gold or the stone, but at the iron, and how, for centuries, it did not behave the way iron should. Across Europe, from the British Isles to the Balkans, archaeologists have uncovered iron artifacts in Bronze Age contexts. Bracelets, needles, blades, objects made at a time when iron should not yet have been part of the story. A time before furnaces were hot enough to melt it, before smelters could master its resistance. And yet, there it was. For a long while, these discoveries were dismissed. Mistakes in dating, contaminated layers, misidentified metals. But as our tools improved, and as spectrometers lit up the details hidden in each fragment, a different picture emerged. These objects were not errors, they were revelations. The iron they carried was meteoritic, rich in nickel, with traces of cobalt and other elements rarely found in terrestrial ore. Their structure held the fingerprints of space, the slow cooling of cosmic metal over millions of years, the signature of a body that had once drifted far from our sun until gravity pulled it down. These were not the products of smelting. They were not poured or cast. They were shaped, hammered cold, worked slowly, with a reverence born not of efficiency, but of awe. In Britain, a small dagger. In France, a pin buried with a child. In Hungary, a fragment of curved iron nestled beside bronze and bone. Each one a whisper, each one evidence of a world that was watching the sky more closely than we knew. The pattern became undeniable. During the Late Bronze Age, roughly between 1,500 years before the Common Era, people across Europe were already working iron, but not from the earth, from the heavens. This was not a fluke, it was a practice. They found meteorites. They recognized their weight, their sheen, their strange resistance to corrosion, and they chose to shape them, not into tools of labor, but into symbols, into objects meant for ritual, burial, or adornment. Why? Because this iron was sacred, rare. It could not be made, only found. Fallen stones that arrived not through trade, but through fire and fate. To hold such an object was to hold the impossible. In many Bronze Age cultures, metals were more than materials. They were imbued with spirit. Gold was the metal of the sun, silver of the moon, and iron came from the night, from the stars. It was the metal of storms and gods, of thunder and death, of beginnings. There is no written record to explain how they saw these meteors. No ancient text to tell us what they believed when fire tore through the sky. But the artifacts tell us enough. They tell us that the metal was kept, that it was shaped, that it was given meaning, and perhaps that is more powerful than language. Today, these scattered fragments sit in drawers and vaults across the world, still cataloged, still weighed, but now finally seen. They are part of a hidden chapter, one that tells us that long before the Iron Age began in smoke and heat, there was another age, quiet, celestial, and slow, the age of sky iron. It existed in shadows, in isolated graves and buried hoards, but it stretched across a continent, carried not by conquest, but by the common thread of wonder. The universal awe that follows a streak of light across the sky. This is the hidden pattern, and in its lines we find the first maps not of roads or kingdoms, but of human curiosity, etched in metal that did not come from earth, worked by hands that understood, in some deep and wordless way, that the stars had more to offer than stories. They could be shaped, they could be worn, they could be remembered. The wind howls differently in the Arctic. It carries the memory of glaciers, of migrations, of silence. And scattered across that silence, in the frozen reaches of northwestern Greenland, lay pieces of a great iron giant, a meteorite, the Cape York Fall, a cosmic titan that crashed to Earth thousands of years ago and changed the lives of the people who found it. The Inuit knew it first, long before explorers mapped the ice, long before ships drifted north in search of passages and furs. The ancestors of the Inuit found the fragments. They did not see ore. They saw promise, tools, blades, a new strength in a world ruled by ice and scarcity. This was not trade. It was not myth, it was survival. Cape York is one of the largest known iron meteorites on Earth. It struck the planet more than 10,000 years ago, shattering into massive pieces that remained exposed in Greenland's icy terrain. The Inuit called the largest one Anihito, the tent. Another was named the woman, and another the dog. Each carried not only mass, but meaning. The Inuit did not smelt. They did not need to. Instead, they broke the meteorite apart with stones, with persistence, with knowledge passed down not through writing, but through hands and memory. They shaped the metal by cold hammering, chipped it, filed it, and turned it into blades for knives, points for harpoons, tools sharp enough to pierce seal hide, strong enough to cut bone. These were not ceremonial. They were not buried with kings. They were lived with, and yet they were sacred. A meteorite is a rare thing, even rarer in a land of stone and snow, where resources are few and every piece of usable material is vital. To find metal, real metal, lying on the ice, that was nothing short of miraculous. Some accounts say that the Inuit passed down legends about the sky iron, stories of a fiery arrival, of a gift from above, of stones that bled when struck. When European explorers arrived in the 19th century, they were astonished to find iron tools in use among a people with no known metallurgy. They traced the source, they followed the stories, and eventually they found the meteorites. The largest piece, Anihito, weighs over 30 tons. It was eventually transported with great difficulty to the American Museum of Natural History, where it still rests today. A fragment of cosmic history moved from the ice to the lights of a museum hall, but long before it was cataloged, it was carved, worked, carried, passed from hand to hand. The tools made from Cape York iron are now scattered. Some rest in museums, others remain buried in Arctic settlements. Each one bears the marks of its making, not in flames, but in patience, not in mass production, but in intent. These were tools that came from stars, and they helped carve a life in one of the harshest environments on Earth. What does this tell us? That knowledge is not always written. That metallurgy did not begin with fire alone. That the connection between human survival and the cosmos runs deeper than ritual. The Inuit turned sky iron into life, into edge, into function. And in doing so, they became part of the larger human story. The story of those who looked up and when the stars fell, did not run, but reached. Today, we remember Cape York not just as a meteorite, but as a chapter in a longer tale, a tale of ingenuity, of cold skill, of a people who forged the fallen, not in glory, but in necessity. In every blade carved from that ancient metal, the stars still echo. In the golden haze of eastern Spain, beneath dry soil and centuries of silence, the treasure of Villena lay undisturbed. Cups, diadems, and plates glowed like sunlight caught in stone. It was a find of pure wealth, nearly 10 kilograms of gold from the late Bronze Age. A masterpiece of ancient metallurgy. But among this brilliance, something quieter waited to be noticed. One bracelet. At first glance, it was dismissed, overshadowed by the gleam of gold. Its surface was dark, muted, unremarkable. It did not shine, it did not dazzle, but it endured. And when scientists returned decades later to study the hoard with new eyes and better tools, they saw what had been hidden in plain sight. The bracelet was made not from terrestrial iron, but from a meteorite. It was not alone. Another object from the hoard had already been confirmed to carry the high nickel signature of meteoritic iron. But this second bracelet, forgotten for years, added something even more compelling. It showed that this was not coincidence. This was practice. intent. The people who buried the treasure of Villena had more than one piece of sky metal. This was the Late Bronze Age, somewhere between 1300 and 1000 years before the Common Era. Spain was a patchwork of early societies. They knew gold, they knew copper, but iron was still rare. Smelting had not yet become widespread, which made these iron objects, and especially this bracelet, extraordinary. Meteoritic iron is unlike any other. It carries the fingerprint of the cosmos, high in nickel, hard to shape, resistant to corrosion. You cannot melt it easily. You do not cast it, you shape it cold. Strike after strike, hammer after hammer, until the star yields to the will of the hand. Imagine the artisan who made this bracelet. No furnace, no iron tools to work with, only firelight, stone, bone, and persistence. They bent a fragment of sky until it circled the wrist like a secret. Not for war, not for farming, for wearing. There is meaning in that choice. The hoard was a deliberate burial. Whether to protect it, to offer it, or to preserve memory, we do not know. But its contents were selected with care. The bracelet was not tossed in, it was placed. Among the gold, it carried a different kind of value. One measured not in brilliance, but in origin. Gold came from the earth. This came from beyond it. To wear meteoritic iron in the Bronze Age was to carry a piece of the heavens. Few would ever see such a thing. Fewer still would touch it. But someone in ancient Iberia not only touched it, they shaped it, wore it, buried it, and then, for more than 3,000 years, the earth kept its silence. When the bracelet was finally recognized for what it was, the story of Villena shifted. No longer just a tale of goldsmiths and treasure, but of celestial metallurgy, of cosmic memory. We now know that meteoritic iron was used across continents: Egypt, Anatolia, Poland, Switzerland, and here in Spain. Independent traditions, distant cultures, but the same impulse. When the stars fell, people gathered the fragments, and they made them sacred. Vienna's forgotten bracelet is not just an artifact, it is a revelation. It tells us that the use of sky iron was not an isolated marvel. It was part of something larger, a shared awe, a shared practice, and it reminds us that history is layered, that even among riches, it is often the simplest object that holds the deepest mystery. This bracelet may not shine, but it sings. It sings of fire falling through the atmosphere, of hands that recognized what they held, of a world that saw the sky not only in the stars above, but in the metal beneath their feet. It was not gold. It was not carved. It had no inscriptions, no ornamentation, no royal name. Just a shard of iron, chipped crudely, shaped like a blade but no longer sharp. It was small enough to fit in a closed hand and old enough to rewrite our understanding of Egypt's past. The artifact came from the desert sands near Gerzeh, the same burial ground that yielded the famous meteoritic beads. It was found among early grave goods dated to around 3,300 years before the Common Era, a time before the pyramids, before pharaohs, before iron smelting. At first, it was cataloged with little fanfare, a fragment, a curiosity. But when modern science returned to it, the story it told was anything but ordinary. Its chemical signature was clear, high nickel content, no evidence of smelting, its crystalline structure frozen in the patterns found only in meteorites. This was sky iron, not mined, not made, fallen. But what makes this object remarkable is not only its material, it is how it was shaped. It had been flaked, not hammered, not folded, not worked as later iron would be, but flaked, in the same way one would flake obsidian or flint, chipped at the edges with force applied at precise angles. This was not metal treated like metal, it was metal treated like stone. To do this required a shift in perception. Whoever made this tool did not see it as iron. They saw it as something new, something they had never worked before, something between worlds. The sharpness of stone, the weight of metal, the sheen of the stars. This was not the act of a blacksmith. It was the act of an experimenter, a quiet genius, unknown by name, who looked at a fallen meteorite and decided it could be shaped, and then, slowly, patiently, made it yield. The tool is small, likely used for cutting or scraping, functional, but its placement in a grave suggests meaning beyond utility. It was buried, deliberately, as part of a rite, perhaps for the journey beyond, perhaps as a symbol of status, or perhaps because the people who placed it there believed it carried something sacred. In early Egyptian belief, the sky was not just a place above, it was a realm of gods, of renewal, of eternal return. The stars were not distant, they were part of the cycle of death and rebirth. To hold a piece of sky, then, was to hold power, not power in the earthly sense, but power that transcended. This tool, simple though it appears, may have been a key, not to a door, but to a worldview, one in which the boundary between earth and sky was thin, and the line between the natural and the divine could be shaped by the human hand. It challenges us, forces us to rethink what the beginnings of metallurgy truly looked like. Not fire and furnaces, but fragments, found objects, slow realization, a spark of curiosity, followed by the will to shape something never shaped before. Today, the flaked tool rests behind glass, still dark, still silent. Many who pass it do not know what they are looking at. They see rust, decay, a forgotten piece of metal. But I see something else. I see a moment frozen in time when a human being thousands of years ago took a piece of the cosmos and turned it into something useful, something purposeful, something meaningful. It may be the first true tool ever made from sky iron, not royal, not glorious, but honest. A blade shaped not for kings, but for continuity. A whisper from the past, not of conquest, but of connection, between curiosity and craft, between the heavens and the hands that reach for them. In the beginning, it was only a bead, then a blade, then a bracelet, pieces found far apart by different hands in different centuries, each one mysterious, each one strange. But now, as we look back across the landscape of discovery, a pattern begins to form. It stretches from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Poland, from the icy coast of Greenland to the rivers of Iberia, from the tombs of pharaohs to the hands of Arctic hunters. A single thread woven through cultures that never met, through languages never spoken aloud again. A thread of iron fallen from the stars. These were not the products of smelting. They were not dug from the earth and purified in fire. They came as they were, from meteors that blazed across the sky and landed with a thud that must have shaken the air itself. They arrived with no warning, no explanation, but always with purpose. The ancient world watched the heavens, not with telescopes, but with awe. The sky was not empty. It was alive, moving, whispering, shouting. And when it sent down metal, people did not run from it. They approached, they reached, and they shaped it. We have now found meteoritic iron in more than a dozen sites across 3 continents, from beads in pre-dynastic Egypt, to arrowheads in Switzerland, to bracelets in Poland, and tools from the edge of the Arctic Circle. No single civilization claimed this practice, It was not a regional innovation. It was something older, something deeper. It was instinct to see a strange metal and wonder, to pick it up, to work it. Not for power, not for conquest, but for meaning. They did not know it came from other worlds. They did not need to. They knew it was not like the rest, and they treated it accordingly, with reverence, with care. They folded it into their ceremonies, into their burials, into their stories. In Villena, sky iron was placed among gold. In el Mara, it hung around the neck of the dead. In Egypt, it was buried with kings. In the Arctic, it became the tools that carved life from ice. In every case, it was not common. It was chosen. This is the pattern, not of metallurgy, but of belief, of wonder, of ancient hands reaching toward the stars in the only way they knew, by shaping what had fallen. We call it meteoritic iron. They may have called it sacred, or celestial, or simply strange, but across thousands of years, the reaction was the same. It was not discarded. It was not feared. It was honored. And now we begin to understand why. The objects they left behind are small. A blade, a bead, a pin, but each one carries the weight of something much larger. The moment humanity first touched the stars, not with rockets, not with machines, but with bare hands and quiet questions. We once believed the Iron Age began with smelting, with heat, with conquest. But now we know there was another beginning, a quieter one, that before we learned to make iron, we learned to receive it, to shape it, to give it meaning. Sky iron was the first metal to pass from the heavens into human history. And the pattern it leaves behind is more than archaeological. It is spiritual, it is emotional. Because this is not just the story of 11 artifacts. It is the story of what we do when the sky touches the earth. We gather the pieces, we shape them, and we remember. And somewhere in that act, we become part of the same pattern. Not just observers of the stars, but participants in their fall.